And now, it's the 2K Online Franchise Sports Report with your host Marcus Reed and Ava Turner.
All right, everyone, get ready for the wild card weekend. We're diving deep into the NFC, looking at these matchups, and really trying to figure out who's got the best chance to knock off the Packers. I mean, Green Bay, they're already relaxing, enjoying that first round bye.
Oh, yeah, the Packers definitely earned that break. But you know what? That just cranks up the pressure for everyone else in the NFC. It's win or go home from here on out.
No doubt about it. Every single game is a knockout round now. And hey, don't forget, next time we're going to be breaking down all the AFC wildcard matchups, so make sure you tune in for that one too. But first up, we've got a full slate of NFC games. Carolina Panthers heading to Levi's Stadium to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Then we've got the Detroit Lions. They're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. And last but not least, we have the Los Angeles Rams going head-to-head with the Atlanta Falcons down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Man, so many interesting storylines here. We've got some rematches from last year, some teams that could pull off some serious upsets, and let's be honest, a lot of high-powered offenses ready to light up the scoreboard.
Okay, let's jump right in and start with that Panthers versus 49ers game. This is a rematch from last year's wildcard round, where the 49ers, with Jeffrey Jarrett at the helm, they just completely dominated. Won that one 49-24.
Yeah, that was a tough one for Carolina to swallow. But you got to consider, they've got a new quarterback this year in Bryce Young. Finished the season with over 3,900 passing yards, 31 touchdowns. Not too shabby.
Yeah, those are pretty solid stats. But, you know, he also threw 18 interceptions.
Yeah.
So can he take care of the ball against a really tough 49ers defense? That's a big question mark.
Huge question mark. And on the flip side, remember, the 49ers have a quarterback who's not exactly risk-averse either. Brock Purdy, he threw for over 4,300 yards and a crazy 36 touchdowns. But he also had 24 interceptions.
So both quarterbacks, kind of high risk, high reward, huh? Sounds like we could be in for a shootout, especially with the run game involved. Carolina has Jonathan Brooks. He had a decent season, 900 rushing yards. But the 49ers, they've got a weapon in Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and McCaffrey, remember, he used to play for the Panthers. So you know he's going to be extra motivated in this game. Plus, the 49ers have home field advantage. Can't discount that.
All right, let's shift gears over to that Detroit Lions versus Philadelphia Eagles matchup. This one, I think we could see some serious offensive fireworks.
Oh, for sure. Jared Goff, he had an amazing season for the Lions. Over 5,000 passing yards and 36 touchdowns. And get this, only 12 interceptions. Dude's been a machine.
But on the other side, you got Jalen Hurts, a real dual-threat quarterback. Didn't throw as much as Goff, but he can make plays happen with his legs. Over 570 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah, it's a real clash of styles in this one. You got Goff's efficiency going up against Hurts' ability to extend plays, make something out of nothing. Really fascinating to see how that plays out.
To add another layer, the Lions are dealing with some key injuries. Frank Ragnow, their starting center.
Yeah.
He's out with a torn rotator cuff.
Oof, that's a tough one for Detroit. Ragnow is one of the best centers in the league. His absence, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Goff, the whole offensive line.
Definitely. The Eagles also got an injury concern with Reed Blankenship, their free safety. Not sure everyone knows, but the free safety, that's like the last line of defense. So, you know, this injury could impact the Eagles for sure.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how both teams adapt to these missing players.
Okay, let's finish things up by taking a look at that final NFC wildcard matchup. Los Angeles Rams versus the Atlanta Falcons, coached by Chuck Davis. Last time these two met in the playoffs was way back in season 29. Rams took home the win in that one.
Oh, you know, the Falcons, they're definitely hungry for some revenge. They got a dynamic running back in Bijan Robinson. He rushed for over 1,100 yards this season. Not easy to do.
And the Rams, they got their own workhorse back there in Kyren Williams. Over 900 yards for him this season.
So yeah, we could see a real battle of the running backs in this one. But, you know, the Rams got some injury question marks. Wide receiver Jordan Whittington and their outside linebacker Byron Young both dealing with undisclosed injuries.
Yeah, and the Falcons aren't immune to the injury bug either. They're going to be without their tight end, Charlie Warner, dislocated his ankle. Mm-hmm. That could affect their passing game, their ability to, you know, really create mismatches against that Rams defense.
No doubt. And hey, don't forget about that Rams defense. They can get after the quarterback. Falcons offensive line, they're going to need to be on point, protect their QB.
All right, so we got 3 incredibly exciting matchups to kick off the NFC playoffs.
Honestly, what really gets me fired up about the wild card round is that you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, we've seen so many crazy upsets over the years. Any of these teams could totally shock the world.
I'm with you on that. It's wide open, and with the Packers waiting in the wings, everyone's bringing their A game, trying to prove they can hang with the best.
Yeah, totally. It's not just about surviving this week. It's about showing you got what it takes to go all the way.
Absolutely. Speaking of going all the way, let's talk about some of the players who could really be difference makers in these matchups. We've already touched on the quarterbacks and running backs, but what about the receivers? Who are you keeping an eye on?
Well, in that Panthers-49ers game, I'm really intrigued by Xavier Legette. He finished the season strong for Carolina, over 846 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. He could be a real safety valve for Bryce Young, especially if they're playing from behind, needing some big plays.
Makes sense. And on the 49ers side, got to mention Brandon Ayuk. He's their leading receiver, almost hit that 1,000-yard mark and 10 touchdowns. He's a real red zone threat. Watching him go up against that Panthers secondary, I wonder if the 49ers try to exploit that matchup early.
Yeah, you could definitely see that. The 49ers, they've got a ton of weapons on offense. They're going to want to come out strong, establish dominance from the get-go.
Right. Now, for the Lions, there's no doubt who their go-to guy is, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dude had a monster season, over 1,600 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns.
St. Brown, he's just a beast. Great hands, runs crisp routes, and after the catch, forget about it. Tough to bring down. The Eagles, they got to find a way to contain him. If they can't, it's going to be a long day for that defense.
Agreed. Now, on the Eagles side, it's Devonta Smith leading the charge, 904 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. He's reliable, but Hurts can spread the ball around too.
Yeah, Smith is a good target for Hurts, but he's not the only weapon they got in the passing game. And like you said, Hurts can also use his legs to create chaos.
For sure. And last but not least, we got the Rams. And, well, Cooper Kupp is still their guy. Over 1,200 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns.
Kupp, man, he's a crafty veteran, always a threat to make a big play. But the Falcons, they got their own weapon in Kyle Pitts, tight end, over 1,100 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns.
Pitts is like a matchup nightmare. He's got that tight end size, but the speed of a receiver. It's tough to defend that.
You got that right. Rams are going to need to have a plan for him. Otherwise, he could go off.
Okay, we've talked about the guys catching the ball. Let's switch over to the guys making the tackles. Who are some of the defensive players you're watching?
Well, for Carolina, they're going to be relying heavily on Derek Brown. Defensive end, had 7 sacks this season. He's a force in the middle of that defensive line, can really disrupt things.
The 49ers, obviously, have Nick Bosa coming off the edge, an absolute monster, 7 sacks in just 9 games this season.
Can you imagine trying to block that guy? I wouldn't want to be Bryce Young if Bosa gets going.
Yeah.
He can single-handedly change the game.
No kidding. Now, over on the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson is their main pass rusher, finished with 7.5 sacks. He'll be huge in trying to keep Jalen Hurts contained.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. And on the other side, you got Jalen Carter for the Eagles. He's young, but he's already making a big impact, 6.5 sacks this season.
The Rams, they'll be missing Byron Young because of that injury, but Ernest Jones, their linebacker, he's a solid player.
For sure. And the Falcons got Matthew Judon coming off the edge. He led them with 9.5 sacks. Relentless. He'll be looking to make Stafford's life miserable back there.
It sounds like we're in for some hard-hitting action on defense, too. There's definitely no shortage of talent on that side of the ball.
No, not at all. It's going to be exciting to see how these battles play out. And, it's more than just the individual players, right? It's about the units as a whole, how they communicate, how they adjust to different situations.
Absolutely. Teamwork, communication, coaching, all that stuff is going to be huge in these games.
Speaking of coaching, can't forget about the experience factor in some of these matchups. Like Jeffrey Jaron, the 49ers coach, he's been to the Super Bowl. He knows what it takes to win in these pressure-packed situations.
That's a great point. Experience matters, especially for a young team like the Panthers. But you also have a guy like Chuck Davis, the Falcons coach, who's known for getting his players fired up, playing above their heads. Sometimes that fire and passion can make up for a lack of experience.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those coaching styles clash.
All right, so we've talked about the players, the coaches, the stats. Now let's talk about the fans. Wildcard weekend is always electric. And the atmosphere in those stadiums, man, it's going to be insane.
Oh, absolutely. The energy, the passion, the noise. That's what makes playoff football so special.
Imagine being a Lions fan, finally seeing your team in the playoffs after all these years. The roar of that crowd when they score a touchdown, the tension on every snap.
And for the fans of the underdogs, that hope, that belief that their team can pull off the upset, That's what keeps us all coming back for more.
Those moments, those memories, that's what it's all about.
You know, these wild card games, it's not just about who wins and who loses. It's about those moments, those stories that we're going to be talking about for years to come.
Totally agree. Okay, enough with the sentimental stuff. Let's get down to brass tacks. What are some of the key matchups, those individual battles that could really decide these games?
All right, let's get into it. In the Panthers-49ers game, I think the one to watch is Carolina's left tackle, Ikem Ekwonu, going up against Nick Bosa.
Oh, that's a good one. Ekwonu is talented, young, but he's going against one of the most ferocious pass rushers in the league. If Bosa can get to Bryce Young consistently, it's going to be a long day for Carolina.
Another key matchup in that game, I'd say, is Xavier Legette against Charvarius Ward.
Ward's a lockdown corner, so Legette's going to have his work cut out for him.
Yep. Okay, moving on to the Lions-Eagles. The matchup that jumps out is Amon-Ra St. Brown going against Darius Slay Jr.
Oh, yeah, that's a battle of two elite players. Speed, agility, technique. It's going to be a clinic. Whoever wins that matchup could really swing the momentum of the game.
Okay, and finally, Rams-Falcons. I'm most excited to see Cooper Kupp against A.J. Terrell Jr.
Terrell, he's a rising star. He's got a huge challenge in front of him, shutting down one of the best receivers in the league. But if he can hold his own, it would be huge for the Falcons.
Absolutely. And another one to watch in that game, Joseph Noteboom, the Rams left tackle, against Matthew Judon.
Noteboom's been inconsistent this season, and Judon, well, he just doesn't quit. If he can get to Stafford, it could spell trouble for the Rams.
As much as we focus on these individual battles, though, gotta remember, football's a team sport.
Totally. It's 11 guys working together, executing their assignments, picking each other up.
And it's about the coaches making the right calls, putting their players in the best position to succeed, making adjustments on the fly.
So yeah, those individual matchups are fun to think about, but ultimately it comes down to how well these teams play as a unit.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so unpredictable and exciting.
Okay, we've talked about the players, the coaches, the matchups, the fans. Now let's dig into some of those hidden factors that could really influence these wildcard games, things that might not be so obvious.
Ooh, I like this. The little things, the subtle details that can have a huge impact on the game.
Right, like special teams. We often overlook special teams, but a big return, a blocked kick, a missed field goal, those can completely change the momentum.
Oh, for sure. Special teams are the unsung heroes of football. They can make or break you, especially in the playoffs.
The Panthers, they've got a dynamic returner in Xavier Legette. He could be a real X factor in that game against the 49ers.
The Lions have a great punter. He can flip the field, pin the Eagles deep in their own territory, give that Lions defense a big advantage.
Can't forget about the Rams kicker, Joshua Carty. He's been nails this season. He could be a difference maker, especially if that game comes down to a field goal.
You're telling me every point counts in the playoffs. A reliable kicker, that's like gold.
Another hidden factor. Coaching adjustments. The coaches who can adjust on the fly, adapt to what their opponent is doing, they're the ones who usually come out on top.
Absolutely. Being able to read the game, see what's working, what's not, and make the necessary changes. That's crucial, especially in the playoffs.
Jeffrey Jaron, the 49ers coach, he's a master of that. Not afraid to change his game plan, always looking for ways to exploit the other team's weaknesses.
Jaron, he's a real chess player out there. The 49ers, they'll be ready for anything.
Dan Campbell, the Lions coach, he's all about that fire, that passion, motivating his players, getting them to play with that edge. He could be a real factor in that game against the Eagles.
Campbell's built a real culture of toughness in Detroit. Those guys, they're not going to back down from anyone.
And Chuck Davis with the Falcons. He's known for being creative on offense, thinking outside the box. You never know what kind of tricks he might have up his sleeve.
Davis is always trying to keep the other team guessing. He's not afraid to take some risks.
So yeah, beyond the obvious stuff, these hidden factors could be huge in deciding who wins and who goes home.
The little things matter, especially in the playoffs. The teams that pay attention to detail, that's who I'm betting on.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. Before we wrap up, I just want to take a minute to appreciate the magnitude of these wildcard games. For a lot of these guys, this is their first time playing in the playoffs.
It's a dream come true. They've been working their whole lives for this moment to compete on the biggest stage, prove themselves against the best.
The pressure is unreal, but so are the rewards.
The chance to compete for a Super Bowl, to etch their names in history. That's what it's all about.
And for the fans, this is it. the most exciting, unpredictable football of the year.
The stadiums, the atmosphere, the energy, there's nothing like it.
So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
It's going to be an unforgettable weekend of football.
Okay, before we go, let's give our listeners one last thing to think about. We've talked about the potential upsets, the matchups, all those hidden factors. But what do you think is the most important thing a team needs to succeed in the wild card round?
That's a great question. I think it all comes down to belief. The teams that believe in themselves, that believe they can win no matter what, those are the teams that find a way to make it happen.
I love that. Belief is contagious, and it can really take a team a long way.
When a team has that unwavering belief, it unlocks their potential. They can achieve anything.
So as we head into Wild Card Weekend, let's keep that in mind. It's not just about talent or strategy. It's about heart, grit, and believing that anything is possible.
Well said. On that note, let's wrap up this deep dive into the NFC wildcard matchups.
We'll be back next time to break down all the action in the AFC. Until then, everyone, enjoy the games.